History loves the image of the warrior king, the man on horseback, sword raised, armies roaring behind him. We are told kingdoms are won with steel, that crowns are secured with blood. But if you look closer, you will see another truth, one men rarely admit. Some of the most enduring rulers in history were not warriors at all. They never held a sword, never led an army into battle. They ruled with strategy, patience, presence. They bent kingdoms not with force, but with silence, with scarcity, with discipline. These rulers were queens, and they remind us of a paradox that unsettles men to this day. Power is not always loud. Sometimes it is quiet. Sometimes it wears silk instead of armor. Sometimes it is embodied in a woman who never fights, yet still wins the war. This is their story. Queens who never fought a battle, but won entire kingdoms. Chapter 1. Elizabeth I, the Virgin Queen. The year is 1558. England is a fractured nation. Religious wars rage across Europe. England itself is unstable, divided between Catholic and Protestant factions. Elizabeth Tudor, daughter of Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn, ascends the throne at age 25. Few believe she will survive long. Her claim is contested. Rivals circle like wolves. Spain, France, and Rome all watch, waiting for her to falter. By every expectation of the age, Elizabeth should have married quickly. A husband would secure her position, provide heirs, and strengthen alliances. A husband would fight her wars. But Elizabeth understood a truth most men never considered. A husband would not secure her crown. He would weaken it. Because in the 16th century, a queen's husband was expected to rule with her, even above her. Marriage would mean ceding power. Elizabeth refused. Instead, she declared herself married to England. She became the Virgin Queen, using her unmarried state as both shield and weapon. Foreign princes courted her, sent gifts, proposed alliances. She entertained them, encouraged them, let them hope. But she never committed. For decades she played this game, keeping powerful kings and princes circling her like moths around a flame. They fought each other for her hand, but she never gave it. This was scarcity at its most strategic. She rationed herself so carefully that her very absence of choice became power. But marriage was not her only test. Elizabeth faced threats of invasion, assassination plots, rebellions at home. Yet she rarely fought in person. Instead, she cultivated aura. She understood that the image of power was sometimes stronger than power itself. She dressed in elaborate gowns, cloaked herself in symbols, used ceremony as armor. At public appearances, she projected majesty so forceful that men knelt not only to the crown, but to her as a woman. Consider the Spanish Armada of 1588. Philip II of Spain, enraged by Elizabeth's refusal to marry him and by her support of Protestant rebels, launched an invasion fleet of over 100 ships. England trembled. Elizabeth did not lead the navy herself. She had admirals for that. But she led something far more important: morale. At Tilbury, she rode among her troops, wearing a breastplate of armor over her gown. And she spoke words that still echo today. I may have the body of a weak and feeble woman, but I have the heart and stomach of a king. The Armada was destroyed not by Elizabeth's sword, but by storms, strategy, and the will of her navy. Yet history remembers it as her victory. Why? Because she claimed it. She turned survival into triumph. She transformed the perception of England from fragile island to unstoppable empire. That is the genius of Elizabeth. She mastered narrative. She understood that power is not only what you do, but what you make others believe. But perhaps Elizabeth's greatest weapon was silence. She spoke less than her advisors wanted, delayed decisions, withheld answers. Men around her grew impatient, confused, desperate to know her thoughts, but her silence forced them to reveal themselves, to fight among themselves, to exhaust themselves. And when she finally spoke, her words carried the weight of thunder, because silence, rationed, is power. Modern reflection. Elizabeth shows us that strategy outlasts impulse. She could have married quickly, chosen one prince, secured one alliance, but that short-term safety would have destroyed her long-term sovereignty. Instead, she withheld, delayed, rationed herself. She transformed what was considered weakness, her gender, her unmarried state, into her sharpest weapons. She never fought a battle, yet she made England feared across Europe. Lessons from Elizabeth I. 1. Scarcity creates value. By never marrying, Elizabeth made herself the most desired prize in Europe without ever being claimed. 2. Aura is armor. Ceremony, clothing, performance. These shielded her as effectively as armies. 3. Silence unsettles. By withholding her words, she forced others to reveal themselves. 4. Narrative conquers. The Armada's defeat was not her doing, but she claimed it as her victory, and history remembers it that way. Elizabeth I proves that queens could rule without battles, but she was not the only one. Across Europe, other queens mastered survival in brutal courts, weaving strategy where men wielded swords. And in France, one queen became so feared that they called her a spider. Catherine de Medici, the woman who bent a nation through webs of alliance and manipulation. Chapter 2. Catherine de Medici, the Black Queen of France. If Elizabeth I was the master of scarcity, then Catherine de Medici was the master of survival. She was not born into the French throne, she married into it. An Italian princess, orphaned at a young age, Catherine was married to Henry II of France at 14. She was considered foreign, unimportant, easily replaceable. The French court sneered at her, and for years she lived in the shadow of Henry's mistress, the powerful Diane de Poitiers. Yet Catherine was patient. She understood what most women of her time did not. Queenship was not about love. It was about endurance. When Henry II died suddenly in a jousting accident, Catherine's fortunes transformed overnight. Her sons inherited the throne one after another, but all were young, sickly, or weak. Catherine became the regent, the power behind the throne, and she would hold on to that power for 3 decades, outlasting rivals who underestimated her. France at the time was tearing itself apart with religious civil war. Catholics and Protestants slaughtered each other in the streets. Assassinations, betrayals, conspiracies unfolded daily. Catherine did not lead armies. She led negotiations, marriages, and alliances. She mastered the politics of ceremony. Every marriage of her children became a chess move. Every banquet, every gathering was staged with precision, designed to display unity, to intimidate rivals, or to distract enemies. Her critics called her the Black Queen, whispering that she dabbled in poison and witchcraft. They said she consulted astrologers, that she staged elaborate masks filled with symbolism, that she cloaked herself in mystery. Whether true or not, These rumors only added to her aura. Fear became her invisible guard. Rivals wondered what she knew, what she planned, what she hid, and that uncertainty gave her leverage. Her most infamous moment was the Saint Bartholomew's Day Massacre of 1572, when thousands of Protestants were slaughtered in Paris. Some historians argue Catherine orchestrated it. Others say she merely failed to prevent it. But what matters is this: Catherine's enemies never knew the extent of her involvement. They feared her as a mastermind, even when she may not have been. And in politics, perception is power. Catherine's genius was not in open conquest, but in longevity. She survived through 3 sons' reigns, outlived countless plots, and kept herself indispensable to the French monarchy. She reminds us of a truth often forgotten. It is not the warrior who always wins, but the spider who waits, who weaves webs, who endures until all others fall. Chapter 3. Maria Theresa, the mother who conquered Europe. If Catherine ruled through webs, Maria Theresa of Austria ruled through womb and willpower. Crowned at 23 in 1740, she inherited the Habsburg throne at one of its weakest moments. Her claim was contested immediately. Neighboring kings saw her as a young woman, vulnerable, easy prey. They launched wars to dismember her empire. And yet, though she lost battles, she never lost her crown. Maria Theresa was not a warrior queen. She rarely appeared on the battlefield, but she embodied the spirit of resilience. She gave birth to 16 children, and every one of them became a piece in her diplomatic chessboard. She married her daughters into the ruling houses of Europe: France, Spain, Naples, Parma. Her most famous daughter, Marie Antoinette, was married off to France to secure an alliance. Through marriage, Maria Theresa extended her influence into every royal court of Europe. But her power was not only maternal. She reformed her empire's administration, strengthened its finances, and centralized authority. Ministers who thought her weak soon discovered she was relentless. She used patience, bureaucracy, and persistence as her weapons. She did not need to win every war. She needed to survive them, and survive she did, holding her empire together for 40 years in an age where most male rulers were undone in a decade. What makes Maria Theresa extraordinary is the paradox she embodied. She was deeply traditional, devoutly Catholic, a mother who saw family as destiny. Yet she turned those very traditions into weapons. While men dismissed her as maternal, she wielded maternity as strategy. Her sons and daughters were not only heirs, they were her armies. She did not conquer new lands with soldiers. She conquered Europe with weddings. The shared lessons of Catherine and Maria Theresa. Both women show us that power is not always about force. Catherine had no armies. Maria Theresa lost many battles, yet both won through strategy. Patience as a weapon. Catherine endured where rivals burned out. Fear as armor. The rumors around Catherine multiplied her influence. Family as strategy. Maria Theresa turned her children into an empire-wide network. Persistence over brilliance. Neither woman won through single moments of glory, but through decades of endurance. Modern reflection. In today's world, these strategies look familiar. Political families still use marriage as power. Corporate leaders still weaponize perception. A woman underestimated for her silence or softness often uses those very qualities to her advantage. Catherine and Maria Theresa remind us that the long game always outlasts the short. The warrior may win a battle. The patient strategist wins the kingdom. From England's Virgin Queen to France's Black Queen to Austria's Mother of Europe, one truth emerges. The most dangerous women in history often fought no battles. They let men bleed while they built legacies. They remind us that kingdoms are not secured by swords alone. They are secured by patience, mystery, and endurance. And in our final chapter, we will look at what these queens left behind, their legacy in the modern world, and the shocking final truth about why queens who never fought are still feared centuries later. Chapter 4. The Legacy of Queens Without Battles. Elizabeth I, Catherine de Medici, Maria Theresa, three women who ruled not with swords, but with strategy. They remind us that force is loud, but influence is quiet. Yet their legacy did not end with their deaths. Their methods survived, reshaped, rebranded in modern times. Because the lesson of queens who never fought is timeless. Wars end, battles fade, but strategy endures. Consider how each of them left echoes that ripple into the present. Elizabeth I proved that a woman's independence could become a weapon. Her refusal to marry was scandalous then, but today it looks like foresight, the ability to define herself without a man's crown. Catherine de Medici proved that patience, secrecy, and fear could build an empire without a single charge of cavalry, and Maria Theresa showed that family, loyalty, and persistence could knit together kingdoms stronger than any battlefield victory. These are not just historical anecdotes, they are blueprints for women who continue to navigate worlds where men dominate armies, industries, and governments. The legacy of these queens is visible not in battles won, but in cultures shaped, in dynasties built, in strategies that still unsettle men centuries later. Chapter 5. Modern Parallels. So what does a queen without battles look like today? She may not sit on a throne, but her methods echo in every realm of modern life. In politics, think of Eleanor Roosevelt or Angela Merkel. Neither stormed a battlefield, yet their persistence, restraint, and patience reshaped nations. Merkel in particular was nicknamed the Mutti, Mother of Europe, echoing Maria Theresa's maternal power. In business, think of women who outlast competitors, not by aggression, but by endurance. They build networks, cultivate loyalty, and let rivals burn themselves out. The Catherine strategy, the spider's web, is still alive. In celebrity culture, think of women who cultivate aura rather than availability. A star like Beyoncé disappears for years, then reappears with precision, controlling narrative the way Elizabeth controlled her court. Presence becomes priceless when it is rare. Even in relationships, the echoes are clear. The woman who refuses to rush, who withholds, who uses silence, who enforces boundaries calmly, she channels the lessons of queens who never fought. The strategies are the same because human nature has not changed. Men still mistake noise for power. They still underestimate patience, silence, scarcity, and that is why women who master these weapons still terrify them. Chapter 6. Why these queens were feared. The greatest rulers are not always loved. Often they are feared. Elizabeth was loved by many, but feared by her rivals. Catherine was vilified, painted as a witch, because men could not explain her endurance otherwise. Maria Theresa was respected, but also resented for her unyielding will. Why feared? Because they broke the script. They refused to play the role of the helpless queen, the dependent wife, the background figure. They showed that power could exist in a form men could not control. And that kind of power, invisible, patient, unshakable, is more terrifying than swords. Consider the difference. A warrior king can be killed in battle. His victory is as fragile as the next campaign, but a queen who rules through patience cannot be defeated so easily. You cannot kill a strategy. You cannot silence an aura. You cannot outfight a woman who never enters the battlefield in the first place. This is why history tried to diminish them, to erase them, to paint them as anomalies. Because admitting the truth, that women who never fought still ruled kingdoms, would shatter the myth of masculine dominance, and myths are the true thrones men fight to protect. Chapter 7. The Final Lesson. So what do we learn from these queens? That battles are not always won with steel, that force fades, but patience outlasts, that scarcity, silence, and aura can conquer more than armies ever will. Elizabeth I never married, and through that absence she held Europe captive. Catherine de Medici was underestimated, yet she spun webs that lasted 3 decades. Maria Theresa lost battles, yet she gave birth to an empire of alliances. None of them fought in the field. All of them won kingdoms. The ordinary ruler shouts commands. The ordinary queen obeys tradition. But the dangerous queen, the queen who never fights, she bends the world by waiting, by weaving, by enduring. She terrifies because she cannot be provoked. She cannot be rushed. She cannot be controlled. And here is the final paradox. History praises warrior kings, yet their empires crumble. But queens who never fought, their strategies still echo, their lessons still live. Because what is taken by the sword can be lost in a day, but what is shaped by patience lasts for centuries. The punchline. The ordinary woman demands power. The beautiful woman is given it briefly. But the dangerous woman, the queen without battles, she creates power so quietly that no one can take it away. Because men may win wars, but women like Elizabeth, Catherine, and Maria Theresa, they win kingdoms. And kingdoms, unlike battles, endure.